Consonants of English. So you know about aspiration. So which one of this has the aspirated T? Stop. The T here is unaspirated. So you should know about the aspiration distinction now. Okay? And today we're going to talk about the duration difference. Now, if you turn to your page 58, this is something I do new this semester because I figured that it might help you to review it if we go over some of the text in your textbook. So it will look familiar to you. So if you look at 58, we are going to talk about the vowel duration differences before voiced and voiceless stop. We did talk about it last time. Do you guys remember? If you're having the same vowel, let's say mat and mad, which vowel will be longer in these two words? Actually, if you look at your figure 3.3, it just so happened in American English, the vowels are shorter when it precedes a voiceless stop. Okay? So sometimes people are being sloppy about pronouncing the last consonant. They might say mat. And you can sort of judge which consonant it is by the vowel duration. You know what I mean? Maybe the person doesn't pronounce the final T or D, but because if you're aware of this vowel duration difference, you will be able to tell what's following it. Okay? And then the duration difference not only lies in the vowel duration, but also the consonants themselves. So if you look at the same picture again, which one? Oh, you probably can't see it all that well. Okay, but you can feel it when you say mat and mad. Which one do you think which consonant do you think is longer? Is it a T or is it a D? Mat, mat, mat. If you release it, the T is definitely longer, and then the D is shorter. So just try to remember there are duration differences that exist between the voiced and voiceless stop. And we're going to move on to fricative, and you will see that it's the same thing for voiced fricative. You also have that vowel duration difference, and you also have that consonant duration difference between voiced and voiceless stops and fricatives. Here's just to make it more clear. So if you compare column 1 and column 2, now, this is the question you should be able to answer now. In English, these two columns, what's the difference between the initial consonant in the first column and in the second column? By, by, by. I know if I ask you to transcribe it, I know if you look it up in the dictionary, it all says B, right? Try to be nerdy and pronounce the word. Do you actually have that pre-voicing when you say the word by? Do you say by? We don't. You don't. Native English speakers don't either. So their in contrast actually is very similar to the Mandarin contrast. We have the aspiration distinction. They're both voiceless. And this one has longer aspiration. This one is shorter. But in English, it's not. Some native speaker will also sneak in some of the pre-voicing in this by, die, and guy. That's why we still call them voiced bilabial stop. But just keep in mind that it varies a lot, and in most cases, this is voiceless and aspirated. Number column 1, 2, and 4. Which two are more similar to each other? Try to pronounce them yourself, and then don't just memorize it. If you bring your tongue and your vocal fold, you should be able to compare. One, is it, how about number 4? Which one is it more similar to? Column 2. And now, if I ask you how you describe the P or T or K, P here, if you have to put it in description, it's a voiceless. Yeah, it is voiceless. And then what's the place of articulation and bilabial and aspirated stop, right? It's voiceless and aspirated. And so it's actually more similar to column 2. Now let's try another one. So with these two, you should know their aspiration differences. And then this one, number 2 and 3. Now try pronouncing by and abai. And then die and a die, guy and a guy. Now feel the b, d, b, d, and g in column 3. Do you feel they're more voicing when you're doing the closure compared to guy, 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 a guy, a guy, a guy? It's more likely you will sneak in some voicing there because when you're pronouncing this A sound, most of the vowels are voiced. So your vocal folds are already vibrating, and then you're moving into this closure stage. So your vocal folds still want to vibrate. And then what's after this initial consonant is another vowel. So it's actually easier for your vocal fold just to keep vibrating. Okay, so you will have more voiced feature in this context when it's between two voiced segments. Okay, but in most cases, when you're saying the by, die, and guy, it's just voiceless and aspirated. Okay. Nap and nap is the same. It's the distinction I was talking about. Sometimes when you're saying nap, and nap, you don't release the final stop. So it makes it harder for you to tell whether it's a P or a B, whether it's a voiced or voiceless consonant. And then you can count on your vowel duration to tell a difference. Okay, that's what I meant to say. And the textbook actually goes through the columns by columns. Now, this is a new idea. It shouldn't be new to you. When you're in high school, did your teacher talk about syllabic consonant? In syllables, the nucleus is usually the vowel. Now tell me again what's in a syllable. What are possible components of a syllable? You have onset, and then usually you have a nucleus. I call it the mother of the syllable because it's the most important feature component of the syllable. And then following the nucleus, you have the coda, right? In most cases, the nucleus is the vowel because it's the loudest. And in most cases, it's the vowel, but in some cases, some consonants can actually become the nucleus of a syllable. And if I ask you to do you think obstruents, stops and fricatives, are they most likely to become the nucleus, or is it the nasal approximant type that's more likely to be the nucleus? Do you think s and l, which one is more likely to become the nucleus of the syllable? You want to pick voiced ones, so it's louder, right? And then having s in the syllable would make it very difficult to form it's less likely you have a voiceless fricative or stop to become the nucleus of your syllable because you want something really loud. So in English, these are the segments that could become the nucleus of a syllable. And I actually have some examples here. So can you think of any example can you think of any word that has these segments as the nucleus? Listen. How many syllables in listen? Okay, now in the first syllable, which one is the nucleus? Listen. Oh. You see, you guys are reading the alphabet again. I mean, you say I, but I was thinking about E, and I was thinking, where did that ah sound come from? Listen. And then in the second syllable is that n sound. So if you were to transcribe it, 如果你们要 transcribe 的话，就变成 with the dot here. Listen. So you can turn to your page 60. It tells about, in English, glottal stops. The voiceless glottal stop is allophone of the T phoneme The T could show up as a glottal stop in certain environment, and this is the certain environment. If it's after a stressed vowel, if that T is after a stressed vowel and before a syllabic nasal in the same syllable, American English speakers tend to make that T a glottal stop. Now, let's reverse it. This was, how would you read this? Bitten, bitten. What do you think it was before you do the sound change? Bitten, bitten. So most English speakers in Taiwan will probably just say bitten according to the IPA, bitten. But if you want to mimic the American accent, you do bitten, bitten. How about this? What was this? Kitten, K-I-T-T-E-N, and then you say kitten, kitten. The textbook does explain how you step by step do the glottal stop. You can start from when you're saying or try say two R's in a row. Before you say the second R, there is actually usually a glottal stop. You have fat. How about this? Fatten, fatten. The food is very fattening, fattening, fattening. Yeah, do this. Fatten with the ing. Textbook talks about in some accent in London, East London probably. Sometimes they would reduce the syllabic nasal into just a schwa, just for fun. Let's do this. Let's do a contrast here. Bitten become and then kitten become fatter, kitty, butter. Yeah, button become butter or button. Okay? Now try 拉丁文 and 西藏. How do you do this too? Latin, Latin, and then I do Tibetan, 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 Latin. You must have noticed that from my pronunciation. I never say Latin. It's always Latin or Tibetan, something. Yeah, some people think that we are swallowing the T. Yeah, that's how non-linguists describe this phenomenon. Instead of being able to clarify the T become glottal stop, they just say, oh, the T swallowed in Welsh speakers' speech. They tend to feel that it's swollen. Now here's a little bit more practice. It's from the textbook. This is, how do you pronounce this? It's very common in American English that before a syllable final voiceless stop, you tend to sneak in a glottal stop. So try this. Rap, 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 rap. It was rap, 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 and then now you're sneaking into a glottal stop. Rap, rapped, rap, rap, and then rap, rat, rat, rack, rack, rack. Now release that P. Now this is the P with the aspiration. Rap, 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 rat. But what's interesting is sometimes eventually you do not pronounce the final P, T, or K. Yeah, it sounds all the same. And then you have to use the sentence to rebuild whether the person is saying rap, rat, or rack. But these variants all appear in colloquial, in conversations. So you just need to be aware of it. And when you're doing the transcription, one of the major tasks for linguists is if you want to document, if you want to archive a endangered language, you need to go and talk to the people and transcribe. Write down the way they say certain things. And these details are very important. You can't just think that, oh, I think the person is saying rat, and then you just do this transcription. You have to be faithful to what's actually pronounced. Now, here's another way of pronouncing things. It's called nasal plosion. I don't think we ever talk about this in the intro class. Now, this happens for words as in hidden. When I say syllable, I mean how many hidden, that's 2 syllable. And then segments. 4 segments, what are they? H, I, D, N. Do you do schwa and N? If you do schwa and N, hidden. That's 5. But now we're telling you that in some people's pronunciation, it's just 4. Okay, but it's not easy to do. Try not to release your D. You have to hold your tongue right there and then do the nasal there. So it's hidden, hidden, hidden. So the plosion, the release, is actually with the nasal, not releasing your alveolar ridge. So hidden, sudden. Late. Actually, sometimes I do glottal stop instead of the nasal plosion. Okay, but because they're all allophones, so it's okay if you can pick the one that you feel more natural to. But just to tell you that this happens, and especially when it's homoorganic. It's a term that you should know. Page 62. When 2 sounds have the same place of articulation, they are said to be homoorganic. Thus, the consonant D and N, which are both articulated on the alveolar ridge, are homoorganic. So it's easy for us to do syllabic nasal for sudden because you can just hold your position right there. But think about, B-O-T-T-O-M. Can you do a nasal plosion? It's much harder because why? Why is it harder to do? You just don't do it. You don't do the nasal plosion in bottom. Why? The thing is, in bottom, how many, the T and M, are they pronounced using the same place of articulation? T is alveolar, and the M is the bilabial. So they're not pronounced with the same place of articulation. So you cannot just hold it there and then do your nasal. To be able to do the nasal plosion, this stop needs to be there. This stop and the nasal needs to have the same place of articulation for you to facilitate your nasal plosion. Last one, we're doing D and N, but this one is the coupling of T and L. Now, does T and L has the same place of articulation? They're both alveolar, so it's perfect easy for them. Now try this. It's strange because it probably means when you're trying to seal your alveolar, when you're pronouncing T, you seal off your alveolar ridge. 你要把它挡住，你才能发 T 嘛。But when you're saying you're probably not sealing it very well. You raise your tongue tip, but not blocking the entire cavity, so the air can go laterally for your L. That's why it's called lateral. Okay, Okay, so I just want you to be aware of this kind of different pronunciation. Okay, so like I said, fricatives also have similar duration differences like the stops. So that's why in some case, in phonology, in the next semester, we're going to talk more about how these sounds can be grouped together. We now think of stops as stops and fricatives as fricatives, but they can actually be grouped together because the way you pronounce them are actually very similar to each other. When you're pronouncing a stop, you block the air and then let go. And then for fricative, you're also blocking the air severely, but you're leaving a tiny, tiny channel for it to go, to pass it. And then for stops, when you release the channel, the closure, you will have a turbulence going over. So we call them obstruents as a group, obstruents, because they create some sort of turbulence. And in human language, sometimes these type of sound will behave similarly. Okay, so, but there's a special feature of fricative I want to point out. It's called labial ization. It's on your page 65. Now I'm going to pronounce 4 sounds, and then can you tell me which ones has more lip action? Labial ization, you can just guess. It must be about labial, and labial is about lips. S, sh, ch, z, and th, th. Okay, which ones or one has more lip rounding? Sh, and do you think G has some lip rounding too? Yeah, so that's what we call labial ization. It's that easy, okay? So, but it's actually very easy for non-native speakers to sort of forget that, but it should be very clear. You can say the sh is more labialized than s, and then same as zh. Okay, at the bottom of 65, page 65, primary articulatory gesture in these fricatives is the close approximation of 2 articulators so that friction can be heard. The lip rounding, so when you're pronouncing a fricative, the most important thing is you create that tunnel. And the secondary feature is the lip rounding is a lesser articulation in that the 2 articulators, the lower lip and the upper lip, approach one another but not sufficiently to cause friction. A lesser degree of closure by 2 articulators not involved in the primary is called a secondary articulator. So this particular one in which the action of a lip is added to another articulation is called labial ization. And sh and zh are strongly labialized, and the fricative s and z are lightly labialized. There's another manner of articulation. It's a sequence of a stop followed by a homoorganic fricative. We call that MOA affricate. Yes, yes. So affricate is also recognized as obstruent because you have that turbulence. Whenever you have that turbulence, we call them obstruents. So this is just a review from 2 weeks ago. When you're having a voiceless fricative has turbulent airstream created at a chaotic mix of random frequencies, sounds like static noise. So on a spectrogram, you see zzz, noise like this for fricatives. And then s and sh just have frequency energy at different range. S has frequency, the intensity of the frequency is stronger in the higher frequency region compared to a sh. That's why when I actually pronounced these 2 segments to you last time and asked you which one sounds higher. When I do s and sh, s just feels higher. This is a quick review. You can do s and sh. Now, just a reminder again that for voiced fricative and voiced sounds, usually you will have a darker bar here for the voiced fricatives. That's called voiced bar. And this is just a review. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. Now, if you want to measure something, what's the consonant in the middle of M-E-A-S-U-R-E? Is it the one on the left or on the right? Now, can you make that distinction though when you pronounce? Do you actually do measure, or do you sometimes do measure? And then version, and virgin. This one is with a zh. Which version is it? Oh, you're going to see the movie. Are you seeing the version made 10 years ago or the version this year? Version. So if you're not sure if you can pronounce these two sounds differently, what you can do is actually record yourself using prot, and then using spectrogram, you will be able to tell if you're actually pronouncing the true zh or you're doing a j. For you guys, is it easier to do a zh sound or j sound? J seems easier. My students have been replacing the zh with j. So which one is which? Which one is the zh sound? A or B? This is me saying aja and aja, aja and aja. I'm not doing it in this sequence. So this is ah. You all pick B. Why? Closure. Which you can just simply say, oh, there is a stop closure in A. Can you see a stop closure? I'm recording in a noisy environment, but you can see, actually it's easier to see the release. Remember when we're calculating voice onset time, you're always looking for this sharp edge. This is created by releasing your stop. So in j, it's a combination of a stop and a fricative. So you're looking for that stop. So if you have that release, burst, this is, I mean, if you're choosing between these two, this is bound to be the one with the stop. So it's the j sound. Okay, so if you're tutoring anybody, have them pronounce the measure and then see if they're actually doing it right, which should be this one. Measure, 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 version, version. Approximants are these four we have been talking about, and I'm going to categorize them as wa, ra, and ya, and l. In English, initial consonant clusters. When we say consonant clusters, we mean that there are two consonants being together. It doesn't, Japanese people do not like consonant clusters. So instead of saying male, so is there a consonant cluster in milk? L and K, right? So they don't like the cluster. What do? Miluku. There are actually several ways you can deal with this. You can delete the consonants. You don't like the cluster, delete one of them. You do mil or mik. Or but in Japanese, in this case they insert vowels into it, so it becomes mi, lu, ku. They insert two vowels into it. But in English, consonant clusters are okay. In words like strength. Strength. How many consonant clusters in strength? There are two. What's the first one? STR, right? And then there's actually another one, strength. But in other cases, sometimes you will see words like swan, swear, and Chloe. Those that can form consonant clusters with stops are mostly approximants, and usually these three. But let's look at these two cases together. When these approximant form consonant clusters with stops, sometimes they could be voiceless when you say it in very quick speaking rate. So when you say play, 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 sometimes you can't really hear the segment of L. You start with the P and then you kind of transit into the A, play, play. And you can sense the L is there, but when you measure it, when you record yourself in prot, you can't really see the blue line for L. That's how we call it, that it's voiceless. And the diacritic for it is the tiny circle below that L. Yeah, it's also on your page 67. Okay, and L, you should know about the distinction between the L before a vowel and after a vowel. Try to leave and feel. That L in feel sounds slightly different from the L in leave, right? And we call it dark L. And because when you're pronouncing the L, in feel, L in feel, you're actually moving the back of your tongue toward your velum to make it velarized. Okay, so it's called dark L. And at the bottom of your page 67, you can also find the explanation of it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6th line from the bottom. The center of the tongue is pulled down and the back is arched toward, as in the back vowel. If there is a contact on the alveolar ridge, it's the primary. The arching upward of the back of the tongue forms the secondary articulation. So we call velarization. Okay, so in dark L, you have that tip of your tongue approaching the alveolar ridge, but you're also having a secondary. Now we're moving to this new stage that we know that when you're pronouncing something, there is a primary articulation, but there is some decoration you do to which we call a secondary articulation to make the sound slightly different from each other. So a dark L has a velarization as a secondary articulation. And this is what I think is the most difficult word for most Taiwanese students. Because this is a dark L, okay? And it's right after R. Many of you you don't have that dark L. When I was younger, I usually I couldn't do it very well, so instead of saying the dark L, I just put the O into it. We're old. We're old. You can tell your student if they cannot do it, just for the time being, sneak into the O. Because the O sound actually have very similar place of articulation for that dark L. Spectrogram, like what I was saying, I won't test you on spectrogram reading for the entire sentence, but you need to be able to tell which sound is which by matching the sound and the spectrogram. So these are the sounds that you definitely have to know. So we're looking at these guys, ata, asha, acha, and I believe Allah, and Aya. Acha for affricate, it also had that release. How can you tell the difference between a true stop and an affricate? Now for the sa sound, on the spectrogram, it's just blurry like this, like the background noise. But in the waveform, you can see it's not really like vowels. It's not that loud, but because of the frication, it tends to have this. How would you describe this? It's like those thingy that you use to wash the bottles. You know, 有没有像厨房里面洗 bottle 的那个? Okay, that's your sa, and na. Oh, maybe you can hear this. So for ana. Because na sound is actually a voiced segment, and you can see that there is some voice bar over here. Okay, so this is a na sound. You can tell by the voice bar and some of the formants here. But, okay, that's the na sound. Awa. Awa. So for glides like wa and ya, it's much harder to tell them apart from the vowel because they glide into the vowel. Okay, so you need to be able to tell the differences of these guys. And for nasals, just remember it tends to have very vague formants here compared to glides. It's just kind of ming into the thing. And here's a spectrogram which will make it slightly easier for you to understand. Now this is they like ice tea with lemon. Now where do you think the lay is by millisecond? They probably start, this is the, you see, this is the voice bar I was talking about because the is a voiced sound. So you have a shadow at the bottom, the voice bar. So this is your the. And think about a. Does the vowel quality change in a? 有吗？有一个 a， 有一个 e. So you can see the formants changing the direction a little bit because there are two different vowels in it. So this first part I'm going to bet is the A part, and then the second part is the E part. A. And then lai. The L sound is again a voiced consonant, so you see the voice bar, and there are tiny formants up here, but it's nothing like the vowels. So right now you should have something in mind that these approximants, when you record them, they actually look like vowels, but not as strong. Vowels have very obvious formants, but this and n and w and y, they have some formant, but not as clear as vowels. La, and then again, I has a quality of change for vowels. So you see the formant changing directions. And then like. So this is the k sound. You have the closure here, and you release it here. Okay? And then ice. You see this s sound here? Also have that static noise kind of thing. And then T, iced tea, iced. There's a D here, I'm sorry, iced. But you see, when you have that D and then there's a T right after it, they're totally the same. You overlap with, your articulators are overlapped. So sometimes you cannot tell the difference. You can not tell the offset of the D and the onset of the T. So you just see them as one gap here. And then this is the aspiration T. The vowel T, that's just E sound. There's no quality change. So you see the formants are actually pretty horizontal. It's horizontal. It's quite flat. It's not changing direction. But once you move to W, the glide, you see the vowel formant W. So those glides tend to make your formant go like that. With. So you can see the vowel here. You can pronounce it as with or with. It's very short. It's not stressed. So when you guys whenever someone asks you to recite an English paragraph, those function words, give me a couple function words according to what you learn in intro linguistics. How about two? It's a function word. Those articles are function words. Function words don't usually receive sentential stress. Remember you can talk about stress at the lexical level and the sentence level. So these function words usually are very soft. So when you pronounce them, you can see by the vowel that it's not as emphasized as those regular words. So the vowel here is very short. With le, this is a Now, how many segments in lemon? There are 5. So you look at here. You have one part here that looks different. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can do it from the beginning or from the end. This is your sound. A. Now again, the vowels have more clear formants. M sound has the voice bar and a little bit something here. Lemon. Okay. How many of you can read PDF articles on your computer without printing it now and feel comfortable about it? I am an old-fashioned. I still like to print them and then write my notes on them. Now I want to talk about an idea that's called to annotate something. And this I'm a Mac user, so this is the PDF viewer that we have. In the toolbar, we can actually annotate. We can add arrows and ovals and highlight things on our PDF. It's actually a nice way in this digital world to save your PDF on your computer. That way, in the future, if your articles are lost, you can just retrieve it. And then your notes are there. And it's always saved with your PDF. And annotation is to add notes. It could be a text, it could be a diagram to give explanation or comments on things. Now, you can annotate PDF files, but in acoustic phonetics, guess what we annotate? Sounds. Yes. after you record sounds, you can't really mark things on the waveform because they're waveform. It's all about energy and intensity. So if you want to add text to explain what's going on, you do annotate. And Pratt has a very good annotate tutorial, but you can go over it yourself. But I tell you that I actually went to China for field linguist research. I was living with Mongol people. These Mongol people are, according to the legend, they're a descendant of Mongolian army who's traveling west to conquer the empire in the west. But some of them stay behind and marry the local people, and they claim they are Mongol people, and in Chinese that they're called Tuzu. Okay. Now the project was sponsored by a prestigious institute, and what they want is us to go out there and record people with the recording, with the audio recording, and we need to annotate the recording. Now, what type of annotation do you think would be needed? Now we're going out there trying to archive endangered language. And we record some sound file. What do you think? What sort of information can linguists give to the world? And what sort of information can we put that in that annotation? So you need to have you need to add one explanation that's probably simply translation. But in the translation, you can add Chinese translation and English translation, right? So that would be one tier for Chinese translation and one tier for English translation. What else do you think we can put along with the sound file to make that sound file more useful to the general public or to other linguists? IPA, yes, we can transcribe it, right? So you can have another tier that's transcription. And you can also add cultural notes. Like, oh, the farm in this area. So Pratt actually have this function that you can add as many tiers as you want. This annotation is very useful to you because if you really want to seriously correct some of the pronunciation errors that you have, like your E and I was never right. So the annotation is very useful, and it's very useful if you want to teach your tutor, your student, how to, I'm repeating myself. You can record yourself and listen to it segment by segment or sentence by sentence. And I want to introduce you this nice website that's called IDEA. It collects all the English dialect, and they record English speakers from all over the world. So you can hear American speakers from the South, from the Midwest, California, and they have the recording there. And there are some passages that's extremely popular for you to practice your pronunciation. I call it a reading material because it's not for reading, it's for pronouncing. And Rainbow Passage is just one of the most popular passages. These passages are designed to have almost all the vowels and consonants in English. So if you can master the passage, you can listen to the native speaker and master the passage, you're pretty okay with those vowels and consonants. So Rainbow Passage will be a good start. You can just record yourself saying the same thing and then compare and then do the annotation. You can annotate it by sentence. So you can go over your recording sentence by sentence and compare that with the native speaker using Pratt. Pratt would let you do that. All the recording devices you have from Windows, or some of you might use Audacity, those you cannot annotate and makes it less useful. Just definitely use Pratt. And this is what I was talking about, that all the things we're learning actually make that is useful. Why did I say YouTube? What do you think? There's a reason. You should be knowledgeable enough to analyze why I do that. Now, t is an alveolar sound, right? I'm changing it to p. Do you think it's likely for me to change into a k or a p in this word? 你觉得我会把 YouTube 念成 YouTube 还是会念成 YouPube? Which one is more likely? Pube. Why? Think about the neighbors. We're going to move on to phonology, and it's in many cases, it's about your neighbor. So because what's the vowel after the T? It's a U sound, and B. Think about, read my lips, YouTube. They both have very strong labial feature, and it's contaminating my T, so it becomes YouPube. It will be very unlikely that I'll change into YouCube because there's no velar sound that would trigger that assimilation. But have you seen YouTube videos with captions? 有没有看过 YouTube 有那个下面的字 There are several ways you can do it. YouTube actually have a tutorial to teach you how to upload your caption. So you can have caption with your video. It's very useful for people who has hard of hearing because then they can look at the caption. But YouTube nowadays actually is doing auto caption. Have you heard of it? So you can upload a audio sound file, and then YouTube would actually automatically make the caption for you. You're not providing enough information for me to process that. You're talking about the copyright thingy, but this is just a mechanism. It's very similar to our text to speech. It's very similar to Siri. How do you think Siri understands you? Siri as in iPhone. You're talking to Siri, right? The only input Siri has is your waveform. And then Siri performs the spectrogram analysis immediately. That's how, and then compare that acoustic signal to the database that's saved in Siri, and then figure out what the words you're talking about, and then the programming goes around to answer whatever you were asking. So Siri was performing, when you're talking to Siri, it's a complex acoustic analysis. There's a complete acoustic analysis going on for that. Now, how do you make captions on YouTube automatically? You have to do the same thing. You have to do the same thing. If I input this sound file in YouTube, they'll have to do what you were doing, the spectrogram reading, chang, 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 and then put it up. From our intro linguistic class, we talk about the writing systems. There are alphabetic language and non-alphabetic languages, right? Chinese is a non-alphabetic language. That's one thing. So for alphabetic language, you just have to match which segment is which. And then if it's German, it's even easier because the sound and the alphabetic matching is really good, right? So you hear a ah sound. A computer just do ah, format, and then no, they don't do ah, they just type ah, and then car, they can just do that. But in Chinese, the major problem is we have so many homophones. Homo, H-O-M-O, and then phone as in sound. Homophones. 朋有几个 homophone? 很多哎，朋 and 澎湖的澎，朋友的朋，蓬勃发展的蓬。Oh my God! So the computer would go, hey, that's a peng. Oops, which peng is it? If you're doing the spectrogram reading, you're only analyzing the segments, right? This is a fricative, or this is a s, and so on. But when you're doing that in Chinese, what else do you have to do? On top of segments, we also have tone, and that's what we call that. That's what we call supra-segmental, because tone, for a word like ma, you have two segments, right? But you have that third tone. That's the entire syllable is in third tone. It's cross segments. So remember, Chinese has tone and it's a supra-segmental feature. So it's much harder. So if you guys in the future actually work with the people from the engineering department and then work out the speech recognition to make our Siri better, to make the Siri friendly to Mandarin speaker, that would be nice. That's how this is useful. And this is just a clarification. It was never clear to me what's a caption and what's a subtitle. Now, what's a caption and what's a subtitle? Do you think if the subtitle is in the language, is in the same language with the speakers or different, do you think that makes a difference? If the person is speaking in English and whatever is down there is in Chinese, do you call it a caption or do you call it a subtitle? Yeah. So, but I think in general, caption just means that thingy at the bottom of your screen. It could be information. Sometimes they even say, oh, bird chirping. Like, 鸟在叫, 也进 caption. And then sometimes they will have the text of the speech. Subtitle, in general, it has more, it's more likely it's a translated material. That's why we call it subtitle. But sometimes people just mix them up. But in general, you can just think of caption as just it's the same language, and then it could provide extra information, not just the speech. But subtitle is usually a speech, and then it's translated into another language projected on the lower part. Okay, this is from dictionary.com, the definition from it. So if you are curious about the distinction between these two. Oh, we talked about that already. Oh, and then last time I actually had a couple typo. It's not King's speech. I don't know what I was thinking. It's RP is Queen's English. I call it King's speech. Last time, I was thinking about a movie. Okay, and then I didn't do the transcription right. It's laboratory. Yeah, in the British accent, it's laboratory. Laboratory, laboratory. Okay? Can you sense we're segue to the end of this class?